Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we'll be talking about the movie The Batman. Fun fact, this movie is based off of the Batman comic called The Long Halloween, but this is not the first movie influenced off of that comic, considering Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, specifically The Dark Knight, is also based off of it. This movie came out in 2022 and stars Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, and Paul Dano, and was directed by Matt Reeves. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The Batman tells the story of how, after some important people start getting killed by the mysterious Riddler, the Batman must try to get ahead of him and stop these killings. Will the Batman figure out who is under the mask, or will it be too late and he have to watch Gotham succumb to the Riddler's powers? The cast of this movie is extraordinary. Robert Pattinson was, of course, in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Well, I guess he was also in Twilight as well. Zoe Kravitz was in Big Little Lies. Paul Dano was in Prisoners. Jeffrey Wright was in No Time to Die. John Turturro was in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Peter Sarsgaard was in Dope Sick. Andy Serkis was in the Lord of the Rings films. Colin Farrell was in The Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Matt Reeves also directed Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. The Batman is an action film about a superhero getting his footing. If you like The Dark Knight, Iron Man, or Bad Times at the El Royale, then I suggest you check it out. The Batman is a neo-noir crime thriller that has you piecing together a puzzle trying to figure out why these people are being killed. It's a 3 hour movie, but it does well to explain everything going on and really lays down some foundation for some future iconic Batman villains. I'm really glad that this film didn't show Batman's parents being killed because I think that's something that is shown in every Batman movie. And let's be honest, we've been there, done that. We know they're dead. Move on. The film explains that they're dead, but it doesn't dwell on it. This film dives more into his father's background as a billionaire running for mayor and his connection to Gotham's criminal underground, which was interesting to see. One big thing that I loved is that the city was basically founded by two powerful families, the Waynes and the Arkhams, and how Thomas and Martha combined those two powerful families. Speaking of his family's criminal past, they also introduced Carmine Falcone, who is a crime boss who secretly runs Gotham, and is kind of the reason why all these events are even happening in the first place. John Turturro plays the character in this movie, and he plays him in a way that is very mysterious and cool, but also in a way that you know that he is not to be crossed. This film has villains that aren't supernatural, and I think that's super important to show that Batman has a lot of villains that aren't superpowered, but they have money, power, and influence. Batman has a lot of monster villains, and it's cool to see them come out to play in this movie. Falcone's right hand man is the Penguin, played by Colin Farrell, and it's interesting to see him not as this big crime boss yet, but still like really important to the criminal underground. Also, you always hear in movies where they're like, "Oh my God, this actor, is unrecognizable in this role," and you look at the picture and you're like, "Well, it just looks like the person with a wig on." But in this movie, Colin Farrell is unrecognizable, and his voice is so different. You wouldn't even like notice him if you saw him out on the street and he was like in his penguin, get up. I thought it was really cool how he really like dived deep into this role, and I think it made the adaptation of the penguin even better. Robert Pattinson really impressed me with his take on Batman. The film shows us how Batman is still in his early days and he's known, but he's still working towards being like the iconic hero that Gotham needs and is still balancing, his alter ego, Bruce Wayne. The film chooses to focus more on the Batman rather than Bruce Wayne, which I think is great because let's be honest, that's the more interesting part. We see how the Batman isn't perfect, but he's trying. One thing for sure is that in a hand to hand combat, he is a force to be reckoned with. With Batman being young still, we also get a young Alfred, which was cool to see him in like this mentor role and Batman's connection to his parents. I love how he was not only helping Batman, but also trying to keep him in the right headspace, considering that Batman also has to juggle, not only being Batman, but he also needs to focus on being Bruce Wayne and run a billion dollar company. We also see Jeffrey writes James Gordon before he becomes commissioner and is still an officer. I think it's important to show how closely Batman worked with the police and how much Gordon advocated for him, because later in life we'll come to see that they'll become great allies and help each other a lot. Paul Dano kills it as the Riddler. He is smart, and his plan of targeting all of these corrupt people is so well thought out. I love the riddles and how they are hard to solve, but also shows how smart Batman is considering that he can solve them really quickly. I thought the first kill of the Riddler was a really interesting scene to see. The way that the camera is watching his family from afar and then zooms into the house and focuses on this victim, and we see the Riddler just standing behind him, just waiting to attack. It was an amazingly shot scene, and I think that it kind of had a little horror element by the way that the Riddler, first is presented in this movie, because we see him there in this moment, and we know that he's like not there just to say hello. Like it's very creepy that he's just standing there. The scene really sets up, like how the Riddler would come to just pop up when he was attacking people throughout the film. It's also really interesting to see the contrast from the Batman to the Riddler. The Batman wants to clean up the streets by taking out these villains and putting them in jail, but the Riddler is like, you know what? I'll do you one better. Let's find all these corrupt people who scammed the whole city, and then let's just end their life. They're both cleaning up Gotham, but in like very different ways. We see how this ends up building followers for both of them. The Riddler has a small group of like extremists who follow him, people who are hurt by the things that the rich and powerful have done to the city. The Batman, on the other hand, is growing kind of like one person at a time, that he is just not some vigilante, but someone who really wants to help Gotham in a way that doesn't leave everyone either hurt or dead. Zoe Kravitz plays Catwoman and really embodies the character's ability to disconnect herself from what is happening in the city. I've always thought of Catwoman as not really a villain or a hero, but she just does things that benefit herself, whether that be good or bad. In this film, she's worried about her girlfriend who goes missing and states in the movie how she's not interested really in rich, corrupt white people being kidnapped and killed. I love that we not only get to see Catwoman's bisexuality on screen, but we also get to see how she is such a kick ass character. She's in her beginning stages of becoming a master thief, but she's already a force to be reckoned with. Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz had great chemistry in this film and really showed how complicated the relationship between the bat and the cat is. They don't end up together in this movie, but I hope to see them again in the future reunite. The score in this movie was awesome, to say the least. Michael Giacchino does the score, and he does an amazing job with ensuring that the music accurately matches the tone of the scene. The Batman theme song is also very epic. I just loved every aspect of like the musical part of this film. The cinematography was great for this film and showed different parts of Gotham, but I loved how in this dark city there were shots that used color as a contrast from all of that darkness. In particular, there was a lot of red. There aren't a lot of cutscenes, so you really feel like you're taking in everything as if you were right there with the character that, is the main focus in the scene. The film also hints at some villains that we may see in the future. The last name of the reporter who was going to expose the Waynes is Elliot, and there is a Batman villain by the name of Hush, whose real name is Thomas Elliot, which would be kind of cool if we get to see him because we haven't seen him in a live action film before, but there is an animated film about Hush that you should watch. There was also an unnamed prisoner talking to the Riddler, and we can tell from his laugh and brief view of his face that this will be the iconic Joker played by Barry Keoghan. I love how they tease these villains, but they were really not the focal point of this movie, and they don't give them more time than what they needed to give them. My favorite part of this film is the first fight scene in the club. This scene showed how the Batman can handle his own in a situation that was not in his favor. He starts by taking out the twins who guard this club, but then he's on enemy territory, and while he has some setbacks, he really holds his own and proves that the Batman is not to be messed with. The Batman has a big mystery, but we slowly come to figure out that everything is deeply connected. The cast, the score, the cinematography are all amazing. If you haven't seen The Batman, then I suggest that you go and watch it right now. Thank you for watching my video. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you have not subscribed, please do so you can keep up to date with more of my videos. But besides that, everyone stay safe, have fun, and goodbye.